You are originally from the East Coast.
I am.
Yeah, you're an East Coast woman. Boston.
I grew up in Connecticut, and
Okay.
I moved to Boston, go to graduate school, and then I moved to Gloucester, where I got a job for the summer, and there I stayed.
What was the job?
The job was working, so I have a master's in anthropology. Actually, I specialize, this has nothing to do with anything, but specialize in historical archaeology. And I wrote my master's thesis at Plymouth Plantation, and I was just like really into early American history. And it's a very long story. So the short version of it, I was introduced to a sculptor in Gloucester who was running a program for kids. This is really pretty off the wall. It was running a program for kids. It was about drug abuse prevention. And he was showing them that by working in burial grounds, which are neglected in almost every New England community, that they could learn history, they could learn art, excuse me, some of them learn to read. And so when he was working with these kids in the burial ground, the DAR or some historic group said, wait a second, you need a historian. You don't have any credentials. What are you doing there? Blah, 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 blah. So I walked in the door. So I was the archaeologist working with these kids. I did it for 12 years, became a national program. And we had a group of children from all walks of the community. I mean, children of wealthy families, of, impoverished, fishermen's children, different ethnicities. And we had this wonderful program, and we restored a colonial burial ground. And that's how I got into the vacation rental business.
I love it.
Hi, my name's Matt Landau. I'm the founder of VRMB and The Inner Circle, the most independent group of vacation rental professionals online. And this is Unlocked, the Tiny Architects edition, in which we travel to meet some of my contemporaries in their element and find out what makes them so special. This is Unlocked.
Cool.
So you can ask anything you want. There's anything that I won't talk about. You can ask anyone on the board, because I'm going to get going.
Let's start with that. You're on the board.
I am no longer on the board.
Like I said, you're no longer on the board.
I've been on the board for 6 years, and yesterday's board meeting was my last one because I got reelected twice and I termed out. I started with Jodi, Matt Curtis, Mike Harrington. We all started.
And this is the
it was
board
crazy.
of VRMA.
The VRMA board.
That's an event we are at today, which is
Yes.
absolutely massive.
It's pretty huge. Yeah.
And when you joined, how many people were attending these kinds of events?
Well, now today, where there's over 2,000, I would want to say maybe 150 if we were lucky. We had its 30th anniversary recently, so I know at least that.
And as a board member, you're kind of tasked with visionary kinds of decisions, the direction that things are going, I'm guessing. Was this the direction that you would have guessed way back when? Do you think things would have gotten this?
Well, I'm not a numbers person, so I don't say, oh, yeah, we're going to be 30% bigger or have any sense. But I was part of the team that, decided that the group that we had that was managing the VRMA wasn't working. I mean, there was a whole thing where there was a couple that started the VRMA or they managed it, and then it was taken over. Then it's a whole other story. But we ended up with a management company, and I had no idea that there was something called association management. That's a profession, and people actually go to school for it. So we were part of this very lucky group who started thinking about the future of the VRMA and started finding out about this, the association of management professionals,
right.
and found companies that could, if we wrote an RFP, then we might get some responses from these people, and we did. And that's how it came to be that Smith Buckland came in a unanimous first place. And with their skill and professionalism, we are in a totally different place than we were before. So we're all very grateful to them and their leadership. And
we are grateful to the leadership who's able to steer things in that direction. I mean, it's remarkable.
It's like when you go to a meeting. So we interviewed, let's say there were 5 groups that came to this meeting. And the people from Smith Buckland knew they had clearly assigned, I mean, they were very strategic, but they had assigned different people to different members of the board. They knew our names. They Googled us, just enough to make it personal.
Right.
And they were right on. It was really
thought
great.
about it.
They had thought about it, and
Yeah.
that's always important.
One of my favorite principles that I've been just seeing over and over again is what I call the feeling of premium. And it doesn't have to be correlated with price necessarily, but it's this air of thoughtfulness, that little things have been taken into account. And you don't necessarily see all of them, but you kind of feel it. And I think it goes for all kinds of businesses.
It's about being a professional. It's the devil is in the details. It's about making a commitment and doing it, and not just coming up with, anyone can come up with an idea, but not everybody can execute it. So when you have the ability to execute good ideas, that puts you in a really frontline position.
So I'm just going to use that as a little cliffhanger, because
Sure.
we're going to get into a little bit of your vacation rental
Okay.
stewardship. I love how, in a way, yours is an extraordinary backstory, but in a way, everybody brings with them this kind of life. Mm-hmm. In some cases, it was a doctor. In other cases, it was a father. In other cases, it was an archaeologist. And they find themselves in the vacation rental industry doing something completely untrained. They had not prepared for this.
Oh, no.
And so how did you actually, what was the entry point?
So this is what happened. So I went to Boston University, got my master's in historical archaeology. My father, was a businessman, said to me, "I'm very proud of you, but I can't believe I paid for this." I said, "Well, what makes you a great father is that you did, and that you allowed me to do something that was in my interest." But he did, that he laid down the gauntlet, and I did have to figure out how I was going to make a living now that I had, this degree.
Right.
And then I got this job in Gloucester, just it was incidental, but I was there for 12 years. And along the way, and I used to run, I would run by this little antique shop in Gloucester, and I got friendly with the owner, and then over time, I bought her out, and I had a little antique shop in Gloucester.
What was it called?
It was called The End of the Line.
Okay.
And then, but I also but I was also working in urban planning in Boston, so I was doing a lot of different things, and that's sort of how I am. Anyway, with this little antique shop that I had as a secondary thing, people would come in and they'd ask me if I knew of any houses for sale or rent. I was like, "Oh yeah, my next door neighbors are in New York. They're not using their house. Let me introduce you to them." So I did that. I couldn't benefit from it because I wasn't licensed. I told someone about a house that was for sale in a very beautiful neighborhood nearby. I put them together because that's what I do. I'm
You're
a
a
facilitator. Yeah. So ultimately, I got my license. And
There was enough of that demand that you were like, I got to actually begin making money.
Well, it
off
just
this?
seemed like it would be a good thing to do. So, and then I realized I could make more money as renting houses than I could selling chipped dishes, which is true. It proved
But
to
you
be
shift
true.
right into renting houses, or these real estate referrals and sales were the entry point, and then you started renting the homes?
So I knew a lot of people. I had this little dump, the little shop. People would come in. They'd ask me the questions. I'd put them together. I got my real estate license. I worked with a friend of mine who was an attorney. He was my broker. So I've never worked in a real estate company. And then I bought him out. And then I had 10 houses. And that was fine. They were mostly my friends' homes, and they were gone in the winter, and I rented their house in the summer. And then I put an ad in the Boston Globe, as it turned out. And a guy who was part of a British company saw my ad for vacation rentals and hired me to be a manager for this British self-catering holiday company. And in a way, even though I had my own company at that point, it was very small.
I was going to say, did you see yourself as a professional at that point?
It was just something I did, and
Yeah.
it was fine,
Right.
and it was fun, and I learned. So I learned by being hired by this British company. I learned that it really was an industry, and I learned a lot. And then it just grew. So I worked for them for 8 years and learned a lot. And then I found there was a company, it doesn't exist anymore, but in Killington called Strictly Rentals.
Okay.
And I got to know them, and they belonged to the VRMA. So I joined the VRMA when
You're
I
like,
had...
wait a minute, there's a whole
it was just starting. And I had, a few homes, and it just sort of grew from there. So I left my other work and worked full-time growing my vacation rental business.
And what was it called at the time?
My company was called Atlantic Properties.
Atlantic Properties. It's still what it's called.
Now it's called Atlantic Vacation Homes.
Vacation Homes. You have updated.
A little bit.
And that was, in what year was the company started?
I'm so bad at keeping track. I don't know, 88, 89,
yeah.
something like that.
And so vacation rentals were a thing in Gloucester back then?
Vacation rentals were summer rentals. Yeah, because people rented out homes on the water from the turn of the century. Or they had houses that they were summer rooming houses. I mean, Gloucester was a big summer location. The train from Boston went through Beverly Farms in Manchester to Gloucester, and very wealthy people had mansions, and they got off the train. In some places, some of the most beautiful houses in Manchester, which is the next town, are right on the train tracks. Most people say, oh, I won't buy a house on the train tracks.
Right.
But you would if you had a mansion and you had your help that you needed to bring up from Boston.
Right.
So yes, it's been an industry ever since probably the 1880s.
Yeah, and I would even argue back probably.
Oh, it could be earlier than that. I
I'm
don't
thinking
know.
like cave
Yeah.
dudes.
No, I don't know
Like,
about
hey,
that.
you can stay in my extra room.
Yeah.
Give me a
a bone.
sesame seed or something. A bone would
Give
be.
give me a shank bone. Something like that. So
So in that sense, the industry was very organic. It was a thing that people demanded, and there was a supply. There were people who were willing to rent their homes out in order to generate income. At what point did it, in your business growth, did it turn into a thing? Like, at what point did you notice, and if you did you notice at all, a turn in awareness? Was it the introduction of one of the listing sites that?
Oh no, this is way before listing sites.
Before
I mean, I advertised at the Chamber of Commerce in Gloucester, and every Friday I would get a fax, and it would tell me the names of the people that had written to the chamber and requested brochures, and then I would either call them or fax them or send them a letter, basically.
These were
I mean,
your
it was
lead
all,
opt-ins.
there was no internet then. We had a file drawer, and there was paper, and, every week I would run down to the local photographic store downtown and have more pictures, I would take pictures of the houses, just one, and then you'd have to glue them onto the listing sheet,
Right.
and then they would go in the drawer, and then I would mail them. And then later we did contracts, and people would mail them back, of course. So, we had to work way in advance. It's not instantaneous like it is now.
Did you begin using all of these tools as they became available? Like, VRBO was probably the first big one, right?
No, it was a company based in Vermont that I think became HomeAway, but I have to think of what the name of
Okay.
it was. It was a book. It was a book of vacation rentals that was printed in Vermont, and Ed Ulmer would know.
Okay.
We can ask him. And then when the internet started, God, it makes me feel old. Talk about cavemen, right?
Back when we would write things.
And then it became like it was a location. It was a website that you could go to and look at houses. So we advertised on that, but mostly it was word of mouth, and people knew I did that, and it just grew, and it was good.
Is the word of mouth thing still an integral part of
Oh,
what
absolutely.
you do?
Yeah. And I'm a realtor. So and I'm very involved in my community, and people know me, and they know that Atlantic Vacation Homes has been around for a long time, and we get a lot of referrals. We get a lot of repeat business, and people know that we stand for quality and have a positive reputation in the community. But that is how it grew, definitely from word of mouth, and definitely through being a realtor.
And the giving back thing, I'm always intrigued by this subject. I believe vacation rentals are businesses that are tied, for better or worse, to their local communities, and that they need to be doing their part. How do you help people connect the costs of doing that, whether it's time or money or energy, in an otherwise very chaotic business? How do you help them connect that investment with the return beyond just this is the right thing to do?
So interesting that you asked that question now, because about 2 hours ago I ran a session on the value of social impact and the role that vacation rentals plays in that. And there were examples of other companies in Park City and the Finger Lakes that have been doing extraordinary things. So most homeowners, for the most part, not all, have the money to buy a second home, and they're looking to make a profit from their investment. We used to rent, and we do it less now, houses where it was the homeowner's main home and they would go to Europe in the summer. When I first started, someone would go to Europe for 2 weeks and I was there cleaning up after them, and I thought, I really don't want to do that. So over time, we are looking to manage second homes for the most part, but we do have some that aren't. And so sometimes in other companies, I can speak about what everybody does. You might someone donate their house to a nonprofit for an auction. Often we do that. I'll trade with other vacation rental managers, a weekend in Gloucester for a weekend in the Outer Banks or York, Maine. And, that's on us, and we pay that. We pay the owner if they want to be paid for it. And so we do that. But I've been like the president of our Rotary Club and very active in that. I've been actively involved and been on the board of the Cape Ann Chamber, been the head of their tourist division. I've been on their DMO board that discovered Gloucester, and now my daughter Michelle, who works with me, she's on the board of that. So, you keep your ear to the ground. Recently, I joined the board of Action Inc., which is our local nonprofit. It provides housing and, services to the indigent population. Because after all, if you're going to be renting luxury homes on one side of your life, you better know what's going on at the other. So I feel that that's my continuum, and I'm very proud to be a part of that now.
And was the theme, just to be clear, the theme about the first part of your answers, how to help people see, other owners and managers, how to help them see the connection between the investment and the return? Is it kind of just a presentation? Is it the messaging here? Like, we want to make sure that your home is contributing to the environment in which it profits from?
So we are beginning to discuss that more. So for example, and this was part of my presentation, and we could do a lot more, but so for example, we work with a nonprofit called Triangle, and there's adults who have some kind of learning issues or whatever it may be, I don't know. But they come and they work with us every Friday. They pack our bags, they fold the linen. They're just a wonderful asset, and they have a supervisor. But we're contributing to their lives and getting as much out of it from our lives. Our whole staff bakes cookies for them, and we love having them there. So that's one thing that we do. We also have bags that we leave at the houses for guests to leave food for people that need it, and we donate that to the local food pantry. So we have all of our lost and found. Once we it's amazing what people leave behind. That all gets donated to the resale shop in town as well. And so we're all doing things like that. If you look at examples like at Park City Lodging, they offer houses for breast cancer survivors as a place to recover, and they get their owners a tax deduction for letting people stay there.
Such an easy, simple
so easy
combination.
But what's really remarkable is that we just surveyed the VRMA membership, and I'm very fortunate in a lot of ways, but my husband is a management consultant, and he's a world-class expert in surveys. So he created a survey for the VRMA membership about social impact. And what we found, and Lynn Thurston was part of getting this started, She originally, about a year ago, looked at websites of VRMA members and found of 150 websites she looked at that there were like 4 who were advertising or mentioning that what they were doing in terms of return to the community. And we started investigating this, and I thought, we're going to do that. We're going to make the VRMA a better place too, because the VRMA itself is looking to become more socially responsible. And if we can have socially responsible vacation rental companies, then we can have a socially responsible management association as well. And it can be just part of our endemic, systemic, who we are as an association. So, and Lynn, works with people who don't have any money and they need to rent out part of their house, and brought her whole team of people in from Finger Lakes who helped decorate the house and get it all ready so that they rented it out for 4 weeks and this woman was able to pay her taxes. There's ways to go about it.
I've often found that a lot of people are doing these things already, or would be more than happy to start doing these things now that they realize how simple it could be. The sharing of that information, a lot of people don't want to feel they don't want to boast.
Right, exactly.
And you also don't want to try to convince someone to stay with you because you're doing something nice. That's not the point. But at the same time, if you don't mention these things, or if you don't at least include it in your presentation, it seems like you'd be missing out on connecting with those individuals.
Well, you're so right on. So what we're looking at now is why in the survey that we put out to 115 people responded, said how many people, 49% of the people that responded said that they did socially responsible things, responsible projects, but they didn't market it or advertise it. And then the next line was, okay, would you do it would you advertise it next year? And they said no.
No.
And so we think some of it is about not boasting.
Mm-hmm.
And because when you're doing things to help people, it's not about yourself, it's about them. And I don't think people should really be taking too much credit for it.
Right.
It's just something that everyone should be doing.
Yes.
So maybe there's people that feel that way, but it's also really wonderful. And it doesn't need to say, oh, Carole Sharoff did this, but Atlantic Vacation Homes is a company that cares about its community, and here's some of the things that we're doing. And let's expand on that.
Yeah.
So
in my vacation rental business in Panama, we were struggling with gang violence. It was a neighborhood that was still very underdeveloped. And together with my partner, started a gang intervention program, a very robust technical capacitación program in which we would take young men who are in street gangs, pass them through a process, and welcome them into the formal society. It was a very, very robust version of giving back because it ended up consuming my entire life. Yes. But what I found is that when I did share it in a tasteful way, there were people who were looking to stay with us because they liked staying with those kinds of places that have that role in their local communities.
Yes, I think that's right.
And in that sense, if I hadn't been sharing it, neither of us would have gotten to meet.
Right.
So a really interesting subject. You're going to begin exploring this?
We're going to be doing more. We've been offered some room in one of the upcoming arrival issues. So we're going to be really going through the data that we have, which is significant, and starting to put stuff together in a more robust way than our preliminary conference session.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've always loved this phrase. If we don't solve our problems, then who will? Mm-hmm. If not now, then when?
Okay, so I know it. It was the prophet Hillel who said, if I am only for myself, then who will be for me? But if I am only for myself, then who will be for me? But if I'm not for myself, then what am I? I'm saying it wrong.
Yeah, then there will be nothing or something.
Yeah, if I am only for myself, then who will be for me? And if not now, when? I think of that a lot because it's true.
If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Oh. If I'm just for myself, what am I?
It's about kind of like like sees like taking
It's the same.
responsibility.
It
for
is the same
things.
thing. It's about doing that.
Shout out to Profit.
This is Sean Miller, the president of Point Central. As a sponsor of the podcast, and also as a person who recently beat Matt in a one-on-one basketball game, we have the opportunity to interview Matt in this season's podcast. Well, we're going to save the full interview for the end of the season. Right now, we're going to share a small tidbit with you. Enjoy. One of these subtopics that comes out of regulation is safety in our private accommodations, which hopefully you don't hate that as a cliche. But if you just think of private accommodations compared to hotels, they'll say they're not as safe for guests to be in. Do you think we're doing the right things as an industry? Or do you think there's some gaps there we do need to improve on, whether it's, your comment of people who are not professional hosts acting more like professional hosts, or just things, again, as an industry we need to bring forward that allows people to know that these are just as safe as a hotel, and then have all these other different experiences behind it.
Safety is so important, and it doesn't get the attention that it deserves either. It's also one of those things that you tend to only think about after something unsafe has happened, when it's too late. It's something that an emerging industry is especially vulnerable to. And frankly, something that could sink us if enough safety issues take place without our prevention. So safety is hugely important, and it falls onto the shoulders of every single independent owner and manager to do. And the unfortunate fact, when we attend a conference like this, most people are super responsible and professional at these kinds of conferences because they are leading their industry or their local market. They want to be better. But the vast majority of vacation rental people out there, hosts, are not this considerate and thoughtful. They're doing it on the side. They maybe don't care about it quite as much. They're just not serious about it. Those are the ones who ruin that's the bad apple that ruins the bunch. So not only doing what we should as independents, making sure our homes are super safe, someone like Justin Ford, Dwell Safe, is probably the first one that's putting out templates and manuals and checklists, things that we need to have, because there is no worldwide organization that certifies the safety of a property. Some groups are doing it, and I hope to support them, and I hope they all work, because safety needs to be improved for sure. And if we do not improve safety, I fear that enough people on their first trial of vacation rentals as a traveler will get turned off, and the mass potential of this industry will be lost. So I think we must nip this all in the bud as independent people, proactively doing things within our own control to make for safe environments. And a lot of times that includes getting the guy who's not serious or not safe down the street to shapen up or else. All right, enough interviewing me. If you want to learn more about Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. You can sign up for a free demo, get free HVAC analytics, and Sean's team takes incredibly good care of people. Now let's get back to the show.
Let's go back to this building of your business, because
Sure.
that's what this season we're trying to focus. There's a lot of buzz in the industry. Lots of new eyeballs, lots of people really intrigued, lots of money. All these, I've just seen this trend of former archaeologists entering the industry. And it gets easy to get caught up in the craziness and lose sight of the sort of substance. The thing at the very core that has been working now for many years. In your case, how long have you been in the industry managing?
35 years.
35 years. With a successful business that pays bills, that contributes to its local community, that employs local individuals.
Absolutely.
It's easy to lose sight of that. And my first question over the course of those 30 years is, what has been the most difficult thing to adapt to? Because you started off gluing photos to paper.
Right.
And you're now
we have like all the technology in the world. So what was one of the hardest things to adapt to?
Yeah.
Yeah, technology. It's like I didn't grow up with it. I was a French major, archaeological, science and masters, and so.
May I just say, I like how you just throw these things in. I was a broker, and I'm also a French major and an archaeologist.
Well, we all are complex people, and we all have. If you think that the key to nirvana is broad-based learning, then maybe I'll get there.
We are
Because,
all complex, but
Yeah.
you're way more eloquent and elegant than I am. But anyway, continue.
So, it sounds so crazy, but just the advent of the internet, that was the first major hurdle. And I was doing everything myself. Maybe I hired a cleaner or two, but I didn't clean the houses so much. But, and then I had to get software at one point. And so I did. I went through 3 iterations. We are still on the 3rd software. I will tell you that the reason I am using the software that I'm using has to do with going to the VRMA. I was in need of software. I'm not really answering your question, but here's a good story.
I'm where you're going, yeah.
And it was in San Francisco 15, 17 years ago. And the only room on the dance floor, and I like to dance, was next to these guys that had just invented the software called Escapia. And so we sat down with them.
Wait, did you dance first?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, we danced and could tango. And a woman that worked for me she was great at tangoing.
That's how you know it's going to be a good software.
And that's how we bought the software. It had absolutely nothing to do with anything. I thought it was a cute name. I did have another software before that had 2. So I had a little bit of experience. And I got about as far as I could. But we liked these guys. And we were their 35th customer. We are still with Escapia.
And you knew enough to know that you needed this software, right? Because you said adjusting to the technology is difficult. There's a lot of people who resist it and maybe don't accept it.
Well, we had one of those charts like the hotels did. You'd go down to the store and get 10 things of poster paper. And I don't have great penmanship, but I hired someone that was better. I still have one of these charts. It's unbelievable. Let's see. Should we have the month on top and the names of the properties below and fill in the boxes with the names of the people? Or maybe it should go the other way. So we kept changing it around.
Right.
And,
Not with erasable marker. You just smudge the entire thing.
No erasable marker. So, pencil. And so it grew from, it's very rudimentary. I mean to have mind frame because it's really worthwhile kind of looking at that.
Carole history.
Yeah. But it was really going from that to look at where Escapia is now and being able to use it. We have lots of different softwares that we use. And I've had to hire people who were better at it than I was.
Meaning the software.
Being technology.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because certainly you want people, at that point, I was 30 years ago, I was the same age as the people I hired now. But, there's such a learning curve. And it was really important, if you're going to stay in the industry, you better stay up to date with just about all the trends that are coming in, and including dealing with OTAs. And where we started, you asked that question earlier. I mean, we all advertised on the early days of HomeAway and whatever. Yahoo had some stuff, and you built it and just worked.
And so what do you say to someone because there's still plenty of people who are not using software, who are using Excel sheets and various little pieces of things, who think it works good enough. They've worked out a little, I'm envisioning, what is that contraption with all the little pieces connected to one another?
You mean like Legos or something?
Yeah, he's like a...
I don't know.
Because this is a podcast, we can just have me insert
the
name as if I never
later.
Got it. Yeah. But there's all these different pieces, and they're resisting the idea of using software to run their business. But it's the kind of thing that you kind of don't know it, how much better it can be until you have it.
Yeah, and you want to get all the upgrades because it's changing. Because these are people that's what they're thinking about all the time, is how to make it easier and better for the user and the user experience to be better. So I think they're foolish. I mean, having a spreadsheet, fine. You have a couple of houses, maybe you own them. Go ahead and do that. But that's not the way to grow a business. And you really do need software. And it does need to be things you can message with. And I mean, we're just using this new property software, Breezeway. I wish I had it 10 years ago in terms of wasted time and misinformation or mistakes that people made. But now when you get your cleaners and your maintenance people and your agents and everyone's using it, we know what's going on all the time. So we're in control. So it's a savings dramatically. So I say embrace change, but sometimes you have to get the people, you have to hire the skill set's changing. So you have to be forward thinking and hire for that.
And I would also say that a lot of them are kind of trying to make these decisions in their own private little home office on their own without any other input. To your first point, attending a conference is maybe the best way to use a conference is to consider some softwares and do some demos and meet the people and ask the questions that you were too embarrassed to ask on the phone.
And meeting a community of people that are in the same situation that you are. So when I started my company, I just sort of made it up. I had no idea that really other people did it. There was no one else in my area, Gloucester, Rockport, where I live. Like one point I called a large real estate company and I said, I have someone that's looking for a house for the 4th of July week. Do you have any vacation rentals? And this woman said to me, oh dear, she said, we don't do rentals, we do sales. Well, then we went into some kind of a recession, and guess what? She was out of work, and I was doing my rentals.
I thought you could come knocking. Did you say rentals?
Yeah, you're not welcome at my door here. So, but I mean, so you get into it in different ways. But it's really important to stay abreast of the technology, and that's the beauty of these events.
And over the course of those years, was the growth of your business, a two-part question, was the growth of your business sort of parallel to the growth of Gloucester as a vacation destination? I'll ask question one. Should I ask question two
Sure.
in the same part?
Sure. See if I remember.
Was it slow and steady, or were there things that would spike over the course of 30 years? A long time to look back on.
So I mentioned earlier that I was hired as a manager for this British company. And we had just an unbelievable amount of British tourists coming north of Boston, and we rented houses that had unbelievable occupancy rates, and we did fabulously well until 9/11. And then many of them were here. They couldn't get home. The people that were in the UK couldn't get here to their rental. It was chaotic. And that definitely changed a lot of the way that I work and thought about life, that you can get extraordinary things like that happening and they could happen again. So, I mean, that was one. I mean, you go through a recession and you try to figure out how that is going to affect your life, and you realize in some ways that vacation rentals are, in some regards, recession proof, because if people have a little bit of expendable cash, it's much more reasonable you can put more people into a vacation rental. You can cook all your meals there. You go to a hotel, that's not the case. So I think that helped us to get through the recessions, because we ended up getting customers who were otherwise renting hotel rooms. So your first part of the question was about the growth of tourism and all on the North Shore. I would say it's growing still. I don't really have the numbers to balance it against that. I think it's always been a tourist destination. So I think more people know about vacation rentals now. And Airbnb has definitely pushed that, for better or for worse. So what I kind of object to now is that people say, oh yeah, I'm just going to Airbnb it. I said, no. You're going to call a professional manager and you're going to rent a quality home that's cared for, that that your money is not going to be going out the door. You'll get it back if there's someone to call for maintenance, blah, blah. So, it's like Kleenex used to be the word for tissue, and now it's Airbnb is the word for a vacation rental. And I think that's a mandate to the BRMA and to all of us in the industry we appreciate Airbnb, and advertise on Airbnb, but I do not manage Airbnbs. I professionally manage companies, properties for my company.
Amen to that. I'm going to get
Yeah.
that written on my name tag. You and I come from the exact same school of thought, and there's plenty of people who argue that Airbnb is the way that that people enter their lead funnel. I mean, a good example is Joshua Tree. It's like the top Airbnb destination because everything is like all trendy and hipster. And they only use the word Airbnb as hosts there. That's all they use. They do not use the phrase professional vacation rentals. Now, when they're talking internally, like amongst ourselves, we'll use it, but in their marketing and their outward-facing stuff, it's all Airbnb. And I've always felt that it's good while that lasts, but I wonder what happens if Airbnb all of a sudden has a terrible stigma, and that's all they've built their reputation on, or if Airbnb decides to pull their listing, or if any of these market changes. They're kind of pegged their entire existence to this corporate entity that's based in San Francisco, and that concerns me.
I think it's not smart. I mean, growing up, my dad was in the textile business and fabric business, and I might wear a shirt that said, whatever, Lacoste on it, or maybe Reebok, wasn't in business then. I don't remember. But he was like, why are you wearing a shirt that's advertising someone else's company? That's just good for them that they got you to do. I see that people doing that all the time.
Well, in all fairness,
why bother?
I love Lacoste. I love that brand.
No, I understand.
And quick shout out to Christy Couts and Brad Klopman. They are my Joshua Tree people. And I sometimes wonder if actually they're many steps ahead of me, because they have all these wonderful like strategies that are utilizing these new platforms and Instagram, and not to knock them at all.
Yeah, no. But I've never heard that.
You get to Rube Goldberg.
Oh, I know about Rube. Yeah, the Rube Goldberg contraption.
The Rube Goldberg. Hopefully we'll just have that inserted, or we could just leave it like this. The insertion would be incredibly awkward. You have the two really unique perspectives. One is as the property manager building from the ground up in a destination, and the industry leader who attends conferences, who meets people from all over, who begins to see patterns beneath. So as those two things kind of dovetail, you said that the recession hit and you guys really felt the impact. What are the characteristics that you have observed about the managers who are able to last?
That's a good point. So I know a lot of managers who've been in business a long time, maybe longer than me. And, I consider a long time. If someone's been in business for 10 or 15 years, and still has a thriving business, they're doing something right. So what is it that they're doing? They're providing quality housing. They're providing on-site, one-to-one response if there's an emergency. They're providing homes that are safe. They're involved in their community.
They're adapting to change.
They are, yeah, very definitely.
And what are the types that don't make it?
Well, there's always a few people that are companies, you see them here, and they think they know everything, and they don't know squat, and they're kind of full of themselves. So some of those don't make it. I think if some companies probably don't make it if they've had fires, or there's something that happened, or someone gets injured or dies in a pool, or God forbid some terrible tragedy happens. I'm sure there's more than one company that's folded because of that. But the other really main thing is in Massachusetts, for example, we're like North Carolina. We have the trust accounting is like critical. And some people don't really understand that. So I think a lot of companies have failed financially because they didn't respect their use of other people's money. It's not their money.
Agreed. And I would even go as far as to say a lot of people have failed because they didn't responsibly organize their own money. They did not enter with a budget or a clear financial understanding of what needed to happen in order to. They were just kind of eyeballing it and feeling their gut instinct, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute.
Yeah, it pulled up short because it's changing, and the more proliferation of the vacation rental word, whether it's Airbnb or professionally managed or whatever, people have new standards. They have new expectations. And I think it's really exciting that I appreciate what Airbnb has done for the industry, because it's helped us compete with the hotels in a very positive way. And you heard today, Marriott is getting into the vacation rental business. Well, thank you for telling us, and because the hotels have been wanting to get into our world, because I remember one of the first vacation rental conferences that I went to, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was the president of Ritz-Carlton. He was a wonderful, wonderful speaker, German man. And he said, you vacation rental managers are so lucky because you don't need the capital. I have to borrow or get investors to give me $10 million to build a building. And you just go at no cost.
You're managing your sister's beach house.
Yeah, or someone else's $5 million house. They give it to you. You get your commission. What a nice place to be. Well, I think that he was way ahead of his times, and I think that a lot of the hotels see that now. So I think we need to be aware that it's changing.
Mm-hmm. And that travelers' desires are changing too. And along that same line, when I describe to people what I do or what I did for 12 years, now they say like Airbnbs?
Yeah, right.
I was like, not Airbnb, but yeah, more or less. Now at least we're roughly aligned.
Yes.
Because previously people would have no idea what the heck I was talking about.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly.
So I think that the awareness does kind of help everybody so long as you've clearly defined who you are, what you do.
And it's grown the inventory, because in a way, the inventory is actually endless. It could be every single house that was ever built north of Boston.
Right.
It just depends on how many people are coming from where that you want to accommodate. People will move out and get their houses ready for travelers to come in.
If hotels are starting to think more like vacation rentals, or at least include the DNA of vacation rentals in their offerings, Marriott being a good example, what about the vacation rental will always be unique? So the first thing that comes to my mind is the mere real estate, like having a kitchen, having private space that people can share without having to sit on the edge of a bed, privacy, spaciousness, etc. But what are the other factors that will keep this industry, what we do, professional and unique, that, let's say, Marriott can't?
So I think that Marriott or any of the big companies, some of the big vacation rental companies, they don't have the boots on the ground. They don't have the knowledge of really what happens in the community level. And I think that that's part of it. I think that the traveler, from everything I've read and learned, stays in houses because they want to experience what life is like in different communities and in different parts of the world. And if you're going to keep the house to a hotel standard, that kind of, for the most hotels that I've been in, they're kind of devoid of personality, and the imprimatur on them is, some lousy art.
What is that word?
What we have now is the owner's imprimatur. The owner, for us, because on north of Boston, we have mostly single family houses. We don't decorate them. We might help the owner to do it. So maybe an owner has traveled to Africa and the house is filled with, beautiful African art. Well, that's their imprimatur. That's who they are. And that partly defines the house and the experience. Or maybe we've had plenty of houses that have beautiful art by early Cape Ann masters, and not Winslow Homer, because he painted in Gloucester, but he's in museums. But seascapes, paintings of fishing boats. That's part of the vernacular.
I have never heard that word. What is the origin of that word?
What?
Imprimatur.
An imprimatur, it's French. An imprimatur is like a signature.
Okay, signature. I really love it. I mean, because it's exactly what I'm attracted to, at least, which is the personality, the texture.
Yeah.
Oh, here's another nice word for you: provenance.
Uh-huh.
The story behind each of these objects.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And you're right. I think that's something that we can do. We can all do fairly easily. It's not like totally impossible for us all to do a little imprimatur of ourselves. The other question that I had was vacation rentals, as they grow, bring on large companies, not even as far as Marriott, bring on companies that begin doing sort of commodity style.
Yeah.
Where do you see them fitting in?
Yeah. I think that I wish I could give you an answer. I think that we're all learning yet. And, there's a place for Walmart, and probably in the vacation rental industry, there's a place for a Walmart kind of companies that don't necessarily focus on quality, although maybe they'll be lucky and some houses are quality. I'm not really sure. I worry about that because I see the value of kind of local owner and professionalism going a long way. And so when companies start buying up really large, I mean, I don't see that as a future.
Yeah, because it's almost like a bigger, richer company could do that better and cheaper, right?
Right, but then what are we really talking about in terms of the guest experience?
Yeah, I stayed in an extended stay a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, this is a soulless vacation rental.
Right.
I mean, it had a little kitchenette, had a little thing. There was
Yeah.
zero imprimatur.
It's perfunctory, and it works, and that's fine. And I wouldn't mind that either to some extent. I mean, it's fine. It's there. But if you're looking for an experience, a quality experience, that isn't where you want to stay.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. This is working towards the end of the interview, and I have one final question. What is your wish for this industry?
Well, my wish for the industry. I guess it's the two things that I'm doing sessions on right now. One is social impact, and that I want this industry to be a responsible industry to the communities, to the planet, to climate change, to fairness to people, to be very much an all-encompassing, wonderful, positive experience, all around. And I also want it to be a diverse industry that celebrates different ethnicities and racial differences and is a leader in that and is, I hate like all the buzzwords of gender equality, but, that's what our communities are made up of. And we want to reflect that. And we want to be the leader in the industry to make sure that people are all taken care of and provided for. I want to make sure that the VRMA works toward improving its mixture, in the companies that belong. It's a little stilted in a couple of ways. And so my thing is, years ago, most of the places that are vacation destinations, not so much the urban kind of things that's happening now, but those were places that were only for certain people. And different religions weren't allowed, different ethnicities weren't allowed, people of color weren't allowed. And, that's all behind us now. But I do feel that some people of color, for example, might not go to a particular beach because there were bad experiences there for their parents, less now so. or it's about the tourist destination making itself more, it's about the tourist destination recreating its image to be open to all sorts of travelers. And I think that the vacation rental industry, I just want it to be a great mixture of life itself.
That's pretty beautiful. I don't think I've ever heard that as the answer to this question, but I'm so sold. Carole.
I was trying to think about how am I going to end that sentence.
No, well, you got it.
You're laughing.
Before this hour began, you sat down and you said, okay, what's going on?
Why am I here and who are you?
And I'm not expecting you to have any better idea now than you did at the beginning, but I just wanted to thank you,
thank you
for sharing that wonderful.
Well, thank you for reaching out to me. That's great.
And I end all my podcast interviews by doing a high five.
Oh, okay.
How do you feel about that?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, but nobody could see that.
But you get where I'm going with this? Hey folks, thanks for listening. I just wanted to remind everyone that this episode was brought to you by Point Central, the home automation experts of our industry. You can head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB, fill out the form, and take a free demo. You'll also get free HVAC analytics, and I can promise you that Sean's team will take great care.